Happy Wednesday, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Comeback Sports, a weekly sports talk show between myself, Pat the Shot Caller Flaherty, and my co-host, Brandon the Coach Perry. We talk about 10 sports topics that are happening across the nation, across the globe, and we want to hear from you too, folks, on this Comeback Sports weekly talk show. As you can see at the bottom of the screen, we have our Twitter handles right at the bottom there, so make sure you follow Brandon and myself on Twitter. You can also follow Comeback Sports on YouTube. If you like this show, you like what we're talking about, go to YouTube, give us a subscription on Comeback Sports. All this content that we are pushing out for you will be fed right to your YouTube channel. And then finally, we have a number at the bottom of the screen. You can call into the show at that number and actually ask us a question, leave a voicemail. Do whatever you want. We'll answer that question. We'll have you on the show, or we'll play the voicemail back, and then we can talk about whatever you want to talk about that's happening in the world of sports. Coach Perry, what is happening, my friend, buddy? How we doing?
I'm doing great. What's up, Pat? I want to give a big shout out to you, of course, for leading the show, and then a big shout out to our producer, Ben Kudo, behind the scenes. We need to give him all the love. He deserves it. He's the man running the scenes here, running the show, the captain of this boat, per se. And then I also want to give a big shout out to, hey, like you said, you called me coach. A big shout out to Coach Primetime, Coach Deion Sanders. Come on, give the guy some respect. Call him coach. That's all he wants.
Very interesting comments from Deion Sanders. Not one of our topics, but maybe at the end of the show, we'll hear a little bit more from you, Brandon, about that whole situation. Not a huge deal, but why not talk about it? Deion's always fun to talk about. So yes, we're going to kick things off here with topic number one, and that's going to be the NBA Finals. Of course, the Milwaukee Bucks are the 2021 NBA champs. They defeated the Phoenix Suns last night in Game 6 of the NBA Finals. And Brandon, I actually wanted the Suns to win this NBA Finals, but it's hard not to like the Milwaukee Bucks. It's hard not to like their story, how the season unfolded for them. What did you think about the win last night for the Bucks?
Well, we both have to eat some crow here, unfortunately, because we both picked the Suns. And, hey, I'm the first to say that we were wrong. And hey, I mean, the Bucks got hot, and they stayed hot longer than the Suns. I've been saying it, the NBA playoffs are all about who gets hot and who stays hot. And I think Phoenix kind of burned up some of their momentum too early in the playoffs when they swept some teams. And, the Bucks were in some fights, and then now the Bucks got really hot late, and they just obviously went on a 4-game win streak and won the series here 4-2. So after Phoenix, held home court, Bucks kind of turned around and then just won 4 in a row. And if you go back to the show that we had done last week and even the week before, I kept saying this series will really begin when a team wins a game on the road, and that's exactly what the Bucks did. The Bucks went to Phoenix, won a tough game on the road there, and then how they kind of took control of the series. Then they went home and they finished the series off. So it really was that easy, and I think it surely shows that you have to continue to hold home court in the NBA playoffs, and I think that has been proven throughout history. But yeah, you got to give a shout out to the Bucks, and you got to give a shout out to Giannis. I think most people really weren't picking them to win, and then I don't know. I mean, I think, some people are having a tough call even having Giannis be the superstar of this team because everybody wanted it to be obviously the super team of the Nets or maybe the Lakers again. So I've heard a lot of comments really about Giannis, but I really want to give him props, honestly. I think he had an amazing series. I think he had an amazing playoffs. I do think he deserves the MVP. I do think Chris Middleton was really close to winning that Finals MVP, in my opinion, because I think Chris Middleton was more clutch down the stretch, especially in moments when they really needed a bucket. They looked to Chris Middleton or clutch free throws. Chris Middleton was the guy there. But speaking of free throws, talk about Giannis hitting his free throws last night in the clinching game. I believe he was 17 of 19 from the line. I mean, if he can do that consistently, he would be able to say he's really one of the best players in the NBA, and he is right now, but I still can think of 5 players that are better than him just off the top of my head. That's LeBron, Damian Lillard, Steph Curry. Man, I mean, who else were you going to say?
Kevin Durant.
Kevin Durant, yeah, Kevin Durant, James Harden. So, yeah, thank you. Appreciate you for filling me in on that one. But, yeah, those are a couple of guys that are, all those guys are still better players than Giannis. And obviously they didn't win the title and Giannis did, but I still think those are better players than him. So if he can continue to hit his free throws, though, maybe he can put himself in that conversation. But I think he had himself a great playoffs. The Bucks deserve this championship. Obviously, their second title in franchise history. But I still think their first franchise team that won was probably better than this one with Oscar Robertson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I think they probably could have beat this Bucks team of current. But, hey, that's a debate for later on. But I really want to give a shout-out to, I think, Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday, because I still think those are guys that are not getting enough credit here. Everybody obviously wants to talk about Giannis. Had the 2 40-point games and then dropped the 50-piece last night. But I think without Chris Middleton and his clutch buckets, and without Drew Holiday and his amazing defense, and the guy had almost a triple-double last night, 12 points, 9 rebounds, and 11 assists. That's almost a quiet triple-double. I think without him playing defense on Devin Booker and Chris Paul at times, let's go back to those Game 4 and Game 5 late turnovers by Chris Paul and Devin Booker that, ended up losing those games for Phoenix. Drew Holiday had a huge hand in it, obviously threw that alley-oop to Giannis, got the and one. I think that was honestly the biggest play of the series there too. So, yeah, I got to give a big shout-out to those guys, but big shout-out to the Milwaukee Bucks for bringing that title home. And Giannis, you deserve it. You deserve all the credit you're getting right now.
Yeah, I think if you look at Giannis, even throughout this season, everybody's always said he needs to get an outside shot. He needs to be able to hit threes. He needs to be able to hit free throws. The free throws part, I agree with. He doesn't necessarily need to be a good three-point shooter for him to be effective. And I think, sort of like a little bit in the Brooklyn series, and then really in Game 2 of the NBA Finals, Giannis was just like, I'm just going to almost be a center, especially offensively, and just pick my spots in the post, drive to the basket. I still have a little bit of a mid-range jumper. And then when he hits his free throws, like you said, he can go to the rim and not be afraid to get fouled. We see that with Ben Simmons all the time. Ben Simmons needs to take a page out of Giannis Antetokounmpo's book and say, okay, I'm not a three-point shooter. We all know that. But I need to be able to go to the rim, get fouled, and go to the free throw line. And that's how Ben Simmons will be effective, just like Giannis is. He's a different kind of player. He's not as good as Giannis is, but he can sort of have a similar type of game, and he's a better ball handler, so he can kind of morph his game the way that Giannis is, almost more as a guard. But that's what Giannis did. He didn't have to shoot, 7, 8, 9 threes a game in order to be effective. So once he kind of figured that out, even though they lost Game 2, Giannis played really well in Game 2, kept them in it. And then you saw, Drew Holiday was so up and down offensively, at least scoring in this series, that Giannis had to carry the scoring. Chris Middleton's, kind of streaky, but he was actually pretty consistent throughout the NBA Finals. But you saw, especially in Game 5, the games were close, and you were like, who, like you said, which team was going to win on the other team's floor. And then you saw Middleton and Giannis in Game 5 do what they normally do. And then Drew Holiday had his best game of the finals on the road in Game 5 at Phoenix. And that flipped the series right there. As soon as they won Game 5, it was hard to see Phoenix even come back from that and even win Game 6, never mind win 2 in a row, despite the fact that Game 7 would have been at home. But, you think about Drew Holiday, too, is you mentioned, he locked up Chris Paul a lot. I think he gave Chris Paul a lot of fits. Chris Paul's not very big. He's stocky, but he's only 6 feet tall. Devin Booker, too, was so good in Game 4 and 5. I think he combined for 80-something points in those 2 games. But Drew Holiday was on him last night, and Devin Booker had a tough time. He probably had his worst game of the series in Game 6. So when you're counting on those 2 guards, then you have a DeAndre Ayton who's still learning how to play in the postseason, who's still finding confidence for himself. And you kind of saw the flaws in the Phoenix Suns against this much longer team in Milwaukee, especially on the perimeter. Because besides DeAndre Ayton, there's not a lot of size on this Suns team. Frank Kaminsky went in and actually had a few decent minutes for the Suns, but there's not a ton of size there. So you saw Giannis do what he wanted offensively. And just to see this Milwaukee team where, people were thinking Giannis might take off, as a free agent. And he stayed with a team that drafted him. Chris Middleton's been there for a long time now. They trade a bunch of picks for Drew Holiday, who's always been on teams that have sort of struggled, but it's never been really his fault. Now he's on an NBA championship winning team, and it is a great story. Coach Bud was going to get fired after the second round series. If Kevin Durant's foot isn't on the 3-point line, we might be saying something completely different, like who's Milwaukee's coach going to be next year. So just to see all those guys, kind of stick with it, stay in Milwaukee. It's a small market team, and win the NBA title was awesome to see. And I think this is good for the NBA because we've had so many star players kind of team up and go wherever they want, whether it's New York, LA, Miami, whatever. And now we're seeing a homegrown sort of team that made one good move to get a Drew Holiday in. And now you have, a nice NBA championship team that you built over a long stretch of time, where it shows that there's two ways to build an NBA championship team.
Yeah, just quickly, 2 points there. DeAndre Ayton, I think, a couple of times got out physical down low by Giannis, and then it neutralized him for the rest of the game. So I think that shows just how much growth, Ayton still has to go as a young player. If you get physical, it's time to get physical back. And I don't think that happened there. And I sent you and producer Ben a text where since Giannis came in the league, he's put on about 55 pounds. And so, man, he's really been in the weight room working and obviously eating right. And he threw his weight around last night. And we're talking about a power forward dominating a center at times. So I think DeAndre Ayton's got to get in the weight room a little bit and get a little bit more aggressive. Because like I said, I think he got neutralized by Giannis really quickly. And then the other thing is, the super team. I love how Giannis talked about, hey, do you even need to have a super team? But I would even still argue that it might not be a super team. But a lot of times in the NBA, we talk about the big three, and they still had the big three: Giannis, Chris Middleton, and Drew Holiday. So if you have that big three in the NBA, I still think you can win an NBA title. So he may not think it's a super team, but it's darn close.